macOS Monterey Beta 6 is available for the public, South Korea is challenging the App Store monopolies, and Apple Watch Series 7 may be delayed. I'm Dave, and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you. And if you want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours every weekday at 12 UTC, like this video, subscribe to the channel and ring my bell. So first story, macOS Monterey Beta 6 is available for the public and I'll be installing it today. There are no particular new feature additions, although the last version of the developer beta did include the ability to enable universal control. That's the new feature that allows Mac users to simply move their Mac's cursor over to a nearby iPad's display and seamlessly control it to move files by simply dragging them between devices, and apparently with no specific setup needed. Now, enabling this did require some terminal commands, so it wasn't specifically being enabled by Apple, but it may be that the feature is either delayed, or potentially it might be that Apple is already happy with how it's working and knows that it will be a huge feature that surprises a lot of users, and they want to save all of the coverage for when the public release drops, rather than it being drip-fed out during the beta period so that it gets a big hit of publicity. Tin hat off now. Next up, in a potentially massive bit of news that's not getting a lot of coverage, South Korea has sent shockwaves through the App Store world by being the first country to bravely tell Apple and Google that they can't force developers to use their app stores to develop software for their platforms. I'm personally still not too sure if this is a good or a bad thing, and it's not clear if the country wants other app stores or other payment methods in the existing app stores or something else. One group who isn't sitting on the fence, though, is the Coalition for App Fairness. South Korea's new app store is a significant development in the global fight to bring fairness to the digital economy, said Megan DiMuzio, executive director of the coalition. We applaud the South Korean lawmakers and President Moon Jae-in for setting an example for the rest of the world to hold App Store gatekeepers accountable for their harmful and anti-competitive practices. The Coalition for App Fairness hopes US and European lawmakers follow South Korea's lead and continue their important work to level the playing field for all app developers and users. Apple responded, user trust in App Store purchases will decrease as a result of this proposal, leading to fewer opportunities for the over 482,000 registered developers in Korea who've earned more than KRW 8.55 trillion something to date with Apple. South Korea itself doesn't seem to be sure what they're doing, but they're going to do it regardless. They know that they want to do something, they just don't know quite what yet. Now, is this going to be like putting up other stores on the land around Apple's store, even though Apple kind of built the town that the store's in? Or is it going to be more akin to Epic opening a little kiosk inside an Apple store without paying for it, between the iPads and the iPhone displays with their dusty old big box PC games and a striped terminal to take your money? We don't know, so just watch this space. Now, just to be clear, I am all for fairness, I'm all for competition, I have no issues with that. However, my big caveat on this is if you allow other app stores or you allow side loading, or you allow other ways of getting software onto the iPhone, the big issue is that although it's a matter of choice, and people, I understand, if it was purely a matter of choice and you could choose to use other app stores, that would be fine. However, what's going to happen is exactly what happens if you visit any kind of dodgy website on your Mac. You remember the old update your flash little pop-ups that your grandma clicks because she thinks it needs to be updated? That's basically what's going to start happening on the phones. You're going to get pages that look very much like Apple's store, which then trick you into installing some software from a website that looks like Apple's App Store, and that's how malware gets all over your iPhone. Now, I know that it won't necessarily affect the most tech-savvy, but those aren't the people that need to be protected. Those are the people that could probably make use of other app stores safely. This is going to affect the people that don't really know what they're doing, and that's why the iPhone was great, because it meant that you didn't spend your entire life trying to fix your mum's phone. The joy of Apple was that it made everything simple, and it stopped you doing stuff that could damage your device or compromise your data without you realising it. So, great job, South Korea. Apple has also this week acquired classical music streaming service Primephonic, which will now close down in a week or so and reappear in an Apple outfit in a few months. Current Primephonic subscribers will get 6 months of Apple Music for free to tide them over before the new app arrives, which presumably will add things like Apple's spatial audio and Apple Lossless. And finally, before we get to your questions, it looks like it's really hard to make Apple Watches with flat sides. Reports are coming in from the supply chain of challenges delaying mass production, so it could be that the redesigned Apple Watch and its larger display could either be constrained at launch with longer shipping times or even bumped to the October event. Smaller scale production began a couple of weeks ago, but critical challenges have delayed mass production while these issues are addressed. So let me know down in the comments if you think it will be bumped from the September launch, or if maybe they'll start shipping that at the same time as the MacBooks, or maybe it'll just wait until the October event altogether. Maybe it needs that extra month of work. Let me know your thoughts. And into iCave Answers, where you get to ask your questions using the hashtag down in the comments. First one comes from Josh. iCave Answers, one day will you show your kids in a video? They've appeared a few times. They just pop up when they decide to wander in while I'm filming. That's fine. I'm not going to do like a showcase where I kind of get them to wear different clothes and have like a modelling thing. I think that'd be weird. There's actually a whole episode where Ted was co-hosting with me because he was in hospital, and we decided to make the show from there. Marcin Kowalczyk asks, iCave Answers, do you think the M1X iMac may clone M1X MacBook core layout, or could we get a more iMac Pro-like spec bump? Okay, I'm pretty sure that the next iMac is going to come with exactly the same M1X that the MacBooks get, because that's kind of what Apple has shown that they're doing. They've shown that the M1 in an iPad or in a MacBook Air or in an iMac or a MacBook Pro or a Mac Mini is an M1. That's what happens. And the whole point of what Apple's trying to do here is to build a chip architecture that they can scale, but without making multiple chips. So you're going to have the M1, the M1X, then once we get to M2, we'll get the M2 and the M2X. And then if you want to have more performance than that, the only thing that Apple might do is do a dual M1X iMac, or a dual M1X Mac Pro, or a quad M1X Mac Pro. That's the way that I think they will scale it, and come up with some kind of fabric that sits between the processors, between these SoCs, in order to make them communicate and sync really, really effectively. That's my thoughts. Evan Rogers, iCave Answers, will iPad 9 have Bluetooth 5 and Wi-Fi 6? This is a tricky one because Apple does tend to not put the latest technology into the base level iPads, and there's a good reason for that. They're making them as cheap as possible, so if they can't get the components cheaply enough in order to do it, then that's the kind of feature that might get bumped. And in all honesty, I can't see that the iPad 6 would particularly benefit from Wi-Fi 6. You're not going to be doing massive file transfers to it. You're not going to be editing from a server. You're probably going to be using it to watch Netflix and YouTube, and you're probably going to do maybe a bit of creation on it, but it's not going to be the sort of device that really needs Wi-Fi 6 at this point. Bluetooth 5, that would be the one that I would be more annoyed if they didn't, but I think that's probably a fair guess that they might include it. However, it's going to be the A13 chip, and I'm not sure if they build the wireless connectivity into the SoC itself, or if it's on a separate chip on the board. Answers down in the comments if you know. James Apple asks, is Mark Gurman the next Guoming Chi, because he's now talking about who's going to replace Tim Cook as CEO in the next 4 years, due to him not wanting to be at Apple after 2025. So Guoming Chi is an analyst for a particular kind of investment firm, but his notes are always kind of released to the public because in the past he's had a great track record. He's got some great inside sources in terms of the supply chain. Mark Gurman is an analyst for Bloomberg and a journalist, so I don't quite know what you mean by is he going to be the next Guoming Chi, because he's talking about who's going to replace Tim. I think what he's trying to do is he's realised that he's launched a newsletter just during a news drought, and he's trying to find something to fill it with. James Apple, will Apple Music quality of the app get better with the recent acquisition of Primephonic now added to Apple Music? I'm not sure what you mean by the quality of the app. Do you mean the interface? Do you mean the kind of music that's on there? Because Apple Music is pretty good with lossless audio and with all of that kind of thing. Now, just on the lossless audio thing, I know it's not quite what you were asking, but I was thinking about this yesterday, and we are pretty confident that there's going to be new AirPods released at the September event, which is great. And we've heard John Prosser talk in the past about Apple switching the AirPods that they have right now from using Bluetooth connectivity to using AirPlay connectivity, which would use Wi-Fi, and apparently the capability is built into the AirPods to do this. It would be a really interesting time to go, we've got these new AirPods and they can support new Apple lossless over AirPlay, and also we're releasing a firmware update for the rest of the AirPods range so they can also take advantage of it. That seems like the kind of wow factor that Apple might do. Fingers crossed. Thaumatur asks, IK Answers, would you like to see an Apple bot inspired by the Tesla bot? Given Apple's consumer device focus, do you think it's in the future if Apple's car project research comes to anything? Now, I don't think there's really any doubt that Apple will release a car of some sort in the fairly near future, probably in the next 5 years. It might be sooner than that, but they've got so many people working on this project that I can't imagine they're going to do this project and then decide, yeah, you know what, we're not going to bother with a car. The other thing that doesn't make sense to me is everyone that says that Apple is working on software to go into other cars, because that's the equivalent of going, Apple has developed iOS to run on all of these Android devices. Not a thing that Apple does. They always do end-to-end, so it doesn't really make too much sense to me. Eb Mundy asks, IK Answers, great shows about the bloom or spill from LED. Does that mean that the screen will show auras or light where things shouldn't be? Seen pictures or renderings of this on other channels. Somehow I don't trust mini LEDs. Will some go out like lights on a Christmas tree? Why are these new screens supposed to be better than Retina? Thank you, iCave Dave. So yeah, the blooming effect is basically you do get some brightness spill around bright points on a screen where there is dark around it, which does kind of affect that contrast ratio thing that Apple talks about. However, it's nowhere near as bad as it looks in pictures, because remember, most of the pictures that we're having taken now are using some sort of smart HDR that are kind of picking out the bright things and dropping down the brightness on the dark things, so it's going to overdo it whenever you take a picture of it. In reality, in a normally lit room, in a normal use case, you're not going to see this. It's not actually a massive issue. Is it as perfect as OLED in terms of the contrast between bright and dark? No, it's not. But that's really where the issue is. If you're watching HDR content, if you're watching videos and that kind of thing, it's absolutely fine. If you're looking at a line or a point light on a device, then it is going to look a little bit odd if you're in a darkened room. In terms of individual lights going out like Christmas tree lights, no, these LEDs are very, very reliable. LEDs just don't really die these days, not in a reasonable length of time, and all of the previous iPads have always had LED backlights as well. It's just that the LEDs are around the edge of the screen and then diffused across it. So unless you've had a lot of problems with backlights going out on other iPads, I don't think you need to worry. Daniel Goldsmith asks, IK Answers, do you think these new laptops will also replace the low-end 13-inch models as 14-inch and 16-inch MacBooks with M1 or M1X processor options, or do you expect that the 2022 MacBook Air will replace the low-end MacBook Air and MacBook Pro? So yeah, this is a difficult one to know. I don't think Apple does need to have a 13-inch MacBook Pro with M1 or M2. I think the MacBook Air should kind of fill the M2 price point. Start the MacBook Pros at $1799. Always have an M1X in the MacBook Pros, or an M2X, or basically an X processor. Oh, for goodness sake. Hello. Robert Neighbours asks, IK Answers, your thoughts on the bigger 30 to 32-inch iMac, specs, availability, price, etc. I really want one. Now, it looks like this is not going to be coming until next year. It looks like it's going to be coming around this time next year as well, which is very disappointing, but you never know, it might come before then. It looks like it's going to have the M2X chip, which is basically going to be a year out from the M1X, which is why I think we're going to be getting annual updates on all of these chips. So M2 will come in the spring, M3 will come the following spring, M4 will come the spring after that. The M1X, M2X, M3X will come in the autumn, along with the newer iPhone chips, the A15, A16, A17. That makes sense to me, but the X chips will always be a generation behind, because that's once they've absolutely nailed down the production methods and made sure that the yields are high enough on those cores to make them feasible. So in terms of the specs, as I say, it looks like it's going to be an M2X processor inside. Availability, again, I think it's going to be that time of next year, and I think the pricing is going to be roughly in line with the current Intel iMacs, so hopefully starting at $1799, possibly starting at $19.99, depending on what screen technology they put in. But I think it will probably be mini LED, so it will be along the lines of what we have in the Pro Display XDR. Jim Ramidos asks, nice informative video, Dave. Thanks. Any news about an M1 based 27-inch or 30-inch iMac? I think we just covered that one. WB Fine Woodworking with Dumb Bullock asks, ICAV answers, Dave, in this video you are reading a lot of text. How do you set that up? Written, typed text, or teleprompter? Thanks. So this is talking about yesterday's video where we did do a lot of scripted stuff. Obviously, when I do the iCave answers, this part is unscripted. The only bit that I'm reading is your questions. And yes, it's from a teleprompter. I would love to show it to you now, but we did do a video. I will take a quick picture of my setup behind it. But basically, my iPhone 12 Pro Max sits inside the teleprompter. My work iPhone 8 sits underneath the teleprompter with the script on it, and it kind of bounces it off in a kind of Pepper's Ghost magic kind of style, so that I can see the words and you can't. But there we go. That's it for today's show, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Tomorrow we will have another show, almost certainly, because that's what we do. See you then. Don't forget to like and subscribe.